everyone. My name is Noma Zarubina and actually I'm from Russia Federation. Today I have the honor to visit a spectacular event with Maria Espinosa. That is 73rd President of General Assembly, and it was absolutely amazing event. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to ask enough questions about many things, about migration, about humanity, about understanding between different countries. But some people asked very important things her, and she answered us about human dignity, about migration problem, about the situation inside the United Nations. And that's very important to visit and listen to each other and know what going on in the world, what happened in Latin America countries and in other places too. So it was a pleasure for me to be here and participate in this event. Thank you.
We have a really great speaker, so I know I'm really excited. How are you feeling? You must be feeling better than that. So I'm just taking the mic, taking advantage right now to make a few announcements and share some juicy stories with you. Madam Espinosa, the PGA, President of the General Assembly, has been called to another meeting. You know, she's quite a dynamic woman. I don't know if you follow her on Twitter. If you don't, make sure that you do. So she'll be coming around 10:15, 10:20. So we're going to have to gear ourselves up for this dynamic engagement that will be coming this morning. But since we're waiting, I thought that I would just share some things with you. My colleagues had some signs up on the board before. Who's going to do their annual review? Need a little bit more hands than that. So the annual review finally opened for all those people who were nice enough to send me a lot of emails. Here's your response. So the annual review, actually, for those people who don't know, it's the way that NGOs that are formally associated with the Department of Public Information report back to us and tell us what they're doing. Because we really do believe it's not just the UN sharing our information. You guys are doing an awesome job out there, right? So we need to know what all the NGOs are doing on the ground within their network. So this is the way that they come back and they talk back to us to tell us what they're doing. And I think we use this information really to, again, to validate the work that you're doing. We share it internally so that people really get a really true meaning and understanding of really what is happening on the ground. So please do your annual review. If you were just recently formally associated with the DPI, you get a pass. You don't have to do it this year. It's only for the old fogies. So I think we're all waiting for those reports, Felipe especially. And the other exciting news, all the way on the other side there, is about the conference. I don't know if you guys know that as of 1 January 2019, the name of this department is going to change. Who knows? Can anybody tell me what the new name is? Press your mic, raise your hand, and help me out. I saw many. Do you know what the new name is going to be? Oh, my young lady there from University of Notre Dame, Baltimore. Press your mic and tell everybody what the new name of the department is going to be.
Office of Global Communications.
Bring us up, girl. We're more than an office.
Global Communications.
It's the Department of Global Communications. So as of 1 January, we will now be called Department of Global Communications. So which means that we have to tweak the name of the conference. So don't be surprised if you start, from now, seeing us, well, right now it says here, 68th UN DPI NGO Conference, Salt Lake City, August 26. See, I gave you the wrong information. 26, 27, 28. But moving forward, most likely, we're going to be referring to the conference, because you guys probably saw the call for the chair of the conference also. So we're calling it the 68th United Nations NGO Conference. So spread the word, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. We had the first technical mission. Maher Nasser, who will be moderating this morning session, is our director who led that technical mission. I'm sure he might mention a few things. But I'm sure you guys know also that on 13 December, we have a planning meeting for the conference. So be there or be square. You need to get involved. It's a conference that is organized not only by our department, but jointly with who? With you guys, with civil society. So please be sure to come on the 13th of December. 13th of December will be the planning meeting for the conference. I mentioned already, if you subscribe to our newsletter, you would have received already the call for the chair of the conference. So as many people know who are involved in the conference, there's a planning process. That process is led by a civil society chair and a DPI chair. But once the conference starts, the UN pulls back, and the chair, civil society, is in charge, full force. So we've put out a call for nominations for that. Oh, here comes Maher now. We put out a call for nominations for that, as well as a call for members to serve as volunteers in the planning committee. I just mentioned that you were in Utah last week. And maybe you might say a couple of things. We're waiting for the PGA to come. She should be here shortly.
It's changed. 10:20.
Yes, at 10:20.
Yes.
So I was taking advantage just to give him some announcements that we have on the board,
Yeah.
because I like to take the mic also. But I don't know if you have anything to say, or do you want to?
We'll say it there.
Yes, okay. So those are the really announcements that we have.
Wait for the PGA.
Yes, so as we wait for the PGA, if you have any questions, we'll be over to the side. Please feel free to come up to us, and we'll be happy to help you with any questions that you have. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I think we're very excited to have this session to conclude the year. I'm not sure whether, I think this is probably the final in the year. My team didn't tell me, but it most likely, actually it's not, there's one next week. I stand corrected. Please make sure, as always, you know the instructions. I mean, please keep your phones on. Just put it on silent, because we want you also to join in the conversation on social media. The handles are on the screen, if I'm not mistaken. Hashtag DPINGO. And of course, the handle for the PGA is at UN_PGA. And mine is online at Maher Nasser UN. Please also, for those of you following on webcast, feel free to send us the questions if you have any questions, to be able to include you in the discussion. Today, 5 December, is of course also the International Volunteer Day. And on this day, I think the UN Volunteers Program, they have chosen the theme of resilient communities. And I think it resonates well with the discussion we're having today, because I know the President of the General Assembly's theme is also how to bring the UN closer to people, and building resilient communities is one of that. Today is also World Soil Day. So this is soil. Yeah. So and the FAO has chosen the theme of hashtag Stop Soil Pollution, because soil pollution is one of the problems that now we are actually encountering with it. So we're very lucky today, and I think we're honored to have with us Her Excellency Maria Fernanda Espinosa. As you know, is the President of the General Assembly and has taken up her position on the 17th of September. The PGA is also the Foreign Minister of Ecuador, and has held positions as Minister of National Defense, Coordination Minister of National and Cultural Heritage, and I guess you all know and have noticed that she's the 4th woman to hold the position, and I think the 1st woman from Latin America. And we hope that she won't be the last. And this lopsided wall of men's photographs on the 2nd floor will have more and more women to change it, and we reach gender parity in that side as well. So, this is an opportunity for you as representatives of NGOs, civil society, to interact with, of course, the President of the General Assembly, who presides over the 73rd session and has indicated from the early days of her presidency of wanting to engage with the people and to bring the UN closer to the people, to you. You are representing many NGOs, many communities that are, of course, represented through their governments, but I think also we would like to engage and give you the opportunity to engage with the President to talk to you about her priorities, the theme of the session, and what she hopes to achieve by working with the 193 member states, but also with you as civil society. And one of the things that we can also talk about later on is the upcoming civil society conference that will take place in Salt Lake City. We organize a conference every year. As you know, it used to be called DPI NGO Conference. It took place this August here at the UN, but the department's name is being changed to the Department of Global Communications as of 1st of January. And the conference, therefore, next year is going to be called the United Nations Civil Society Conference. The mayor of Salt Lake City came here in August and she offered to host it. So it will be the first time this UN conference will go to a city other than New York. And we hope you will be able to join us, Madam President, to join at least expected 5,000 people. The city is planning for 5,000 people. The conference is going to be around the theme of building safe, inclusive, and resilient and sustainable communities together, SDG 11, and how it relates to the other SDGs, especially, of course, looking into the urban communities and climate change and all of these things happening together. So without further ado, I think maybe we'll turn now to you, Madam President, to tell us more about your priorities and how you see working with civil society representatives and civil society and young people, because also what we have tried to encourage is young and youth participation in these briefings and these conferences. The last conference, we had 1/3 or more than 1/3 of the participants were young people, youth. So this is a great opportunity for also young people. I would like to see more questions from young people today. So if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to call on you. And don't try to sit in the back. I'll pick the ones in the back first. So, Madam President, please.
Well, thank you so much, Maher, for inviting me, for allowing me to have this dialogue with you today. And when I sit in front of people like you that devote your lives to dream, to struggle to make the dreams come true on different areas, because I assume that you're working on different issues, whether it be disarmament, the environmental agenda, climate, women's rights, all, you know, every issue on the multilateral agenda. I really commend you for devoting your life to that. And just to share with you a personal note, you know, my first job, no, I started at 17. I was very audacious. I participated in a public call to work in the National Institute of Heritage. I was 17 years old. I just ended high school. And my father told me, but no, they're not going to give you the job. You're not old enough. But I did. I applied. Just in case I didn't put my birth date, just to make sure. And I won. I started working for the public service very early on. But my serious first job was, I think I was 20 years old. I worked for a very small NGO in my country called Fundación Natura. And starting there, I started my commitment to the environmental cause, and in particular, environmental cause connected to the rights of indigenous peoples in my country. And here I am, several decades after that, with you. I'm here with you in a moment where you and your work are more needed than ever. Because, it is not a secret that we all need to join forces to make sure that multilateralism is taken seriously, that we commit and recommit to the multilateral agenda, and to make sure that we go, we look at the future and we build for a better present and future, and that we are responsible with future generations as well. Sometimes, environments change, sometimes difficulties emerge, and I believe strongly that the voices of civil society, that your role as transiting together with decision-making, decision makers in general in different countries is indeed, more needed perhaps than ever. You are, the voice of consciousness of your countries, the voice of consciousness also in a way of society. So I think that I really applaud. I was thinking, to be honest, I thought we were going to have a conversation with 20 NGOs, and we will be sitting in circle among us, but now I see a full room, and that also is a reflection of how much importance and commitment and connection civil society has to the work of the United Nations. I think that, thank you. I think that when we were asked to choose a theme for this year's session, we thought about several, options. But I am very happy that we decided to use this phrase, making the UN relevant to all. And I think that we live in times where we need to make the organization relevant. And how do we make the organization relevant? People ask me, but how? I wish I had a crystal ball and just have everything clear in my mind. But the truth is that to make the organization more relevant, we need to be more efficient. We need to be more transparent. We need to be able to listen more to the people we represent. We need to have el pie en la tierra, as we say in Spanish. The foot on the, feet on the ground. Yeah, thank you. Feet on the ground. And we really, really, really need to deliver better. And that's why when we were thinking about this, making the United Nations relevant for all, we came up with 7 priorities. And it's not that we just came with a list of issues. We did a serious work identifying what were the most pressing issues. And I did, a broad consultations with regional groups, with political groups, bilateral conversations. And we came up with these 7 priorities, but they are totally connected with this year's session. They are connected to the mandates that the General Assembly has, but they are also connected to the needs and expectations of public opinion, of people around the world. And one of them, perhaps, and I repeat this, because it's a priority that is not going to make front pages. It is not very sexy, it's not very I'm going to write 3 articles about this. No, but it's very important. The first priority is on revitalization of the United Nations. It is about making sure that the organization is fit for purpose. It is making sure that the organization really, whatever we do every day of our lives, the bureaucracy within the UN, member states, officials, delegates, we all think about the people in need out there. And believe me that when things get tough here, and things get tough pretty often nowadays on several issues, I always think, you know, if we take this decision, who are the human beings that are behind this? Who is going to suffer? Who is going to have more hope? Who is going to be affected by the decisions we take? And believe me that it is a simple yet a very important exercise. I'm just coming back from Katowice yesterday. I don't even know, the day before yesterday, the day before yesterday. And I told that in the opening plenary speech. I said, please, to the delegates, to the negotiators, just think about what is going to happen if you don't agree on a strong program of work for the Paris Agreement. We are already seeing millions being displaced from their home countries because of climate-related issues. Read the data, read the scientific evidence that we really need to come to grips on this. And in any other issue, on disarmament issue, on peace and security issues, et cetera, et cetera. So perhaps during the conversation we can expand a little more. But basically this revitalization priority has 3 pillars. One is to support the Secretary General in implementing the reform process. One of the outcomes already is the change in the name of the DPI that now is going to be called the Department of Global Communications. But these are not only name changes, and it's important, Maher, that people know about it. We are undergoing a profound restructure of this organization to deliver better, to be more grounded, to be more effective, more responsive, etc. But, you know, perhaps if you're interested, we can talk about that. So reform of the United Nations, the 3 pillars, the pillar on peace and security, the pillar on management, and the pillar on the new development system. The second component, and please, we need your help on this, it's to boost the process on revitalization of the General Assembly. The General Assembly has to regain its authority. We should not forget that the General Assembly is the parliament of humanity, is the most democratic and universal body of the multilateral system. And sometimes we face challenges. We face challenges of being able to deliver, of being able, I call it the implementation gap that we have. We pass every year 600 resolutions, but then the follow-up, the mainstreaming, the being serious about the things that we put forward are put in question. But we also need a structure, a scaffold, a strong scaffold, you know, to support the work of the General Assembly and of the President himself. There are a lot of issues that we need to resolve and address on this particular issue. And the third pillar of the revitalization is the reform of the Security Council. You know very well, if you're familiar with the UN, this is one of the most contentious yet most divisive issues. We will continue with the process in this session, and if you're interested, I can give you perhaps also some information. I will go on very quickly on the other priorities. Gender equality, very important, and I will focus in particular on issues of the political empowerment of women and the political participation of women in decision making. I will be organizing a high-level event on the 12th of March. I'm saying it because I think we would love to see you there, called Women in Power, to look at the challenges that women face when they have chosen a political career. So we hope to have female heads of state and government being here in New York for the 12th of March. Third priority is on the rights of persons with disabilities, basically 2 priorities. To universalize the CRPD, the convention, we're working towards that, working also in making the UN and the UN quarters everywhere more accessible to persons with disabilities. I have created a steering committee that was launched with the full engagement and participation of civil society, a steering committee last week to look at the accessibility part of this building, but of the UN offices around the world. The fourth priority, of course, climate action, of course, climate on the environment, two issues, climate action, a high-level event on the 28th of March. I hope I'm saying the right thing, but 28th of March, high-level event on climate and future generations is a mandated event by the General Assembly, and this is going to be like a stepping stone or a moment to prepare for the climate summit in September and also to take stock from Katowice. Climate action, but also something that is extremely important and where civil society has a very, very important role to play, which is the global campaign against single-use plastics and plastic pollution. We launched the campaign with the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda yesterday, and your organizations, please, should be fully engaged with this. There are several activities that we have planned, starting by a photo contest on oceans pollutions and plastic pollution in particular. And the campaign will continue this year. We have great support from DPI, and we will continue to partner with NGOs and civil society to make it a reality. The other priority is on youth, peace and security. I won't expand on that, but the approach is a sustaining peace approach, a preventive diplomacy approach, and to put at the center the role of young people as makers and architects of peaceful societies. And we have also planned a series of activities. There is a global conference that is extremely important in Helsinki, in Finland, in March also, and we will have, an echo of that here in New York as well. Which priority I'm leaving out? Decent work, very important. This year is the centenary of the ILO. There is a very important report that is coming out on the future of work. Since I have, used the theme of women empowerment and youth, I think that the issue of decent work is extremely important, especially nowadays. This year, the HLPF, ECOSOC, is going to assess the SDG on decent work and economic growth. We will take that momentum, team up with ECOSOC, team up with ILO, and organize a meaningful conversation about the future of work, especially putting young people and putting women at the center. On the role of women, not only access of women to quality jobs, but to reduce the gap on the salary gap between men and women around the world. I think I've covered them all, okay. Just to make sure that I'm not leaving anything out. Okay, so basically this is the work we're doing, and believe me, the umbrella, the aloe that pushes us to work hard every day is to make this organization more relevant to all. Just on a quick note. Oh, little thing, migration, I forgot. It's because I'm about to travel to Marrakesh, perhaps, that I forgot that. But yes, migration and refugees is indeed the seventh priority. Migration, the Global Compact on Migration. We really want to have a strong conference in Marrakesh. We really want to show that shared framework for cooperation, for exchange of good practices, for looking at migration as a phenomenon that has determined human history, I think it's necessary. And the issue of refugees as well. We are going very soon to vote on the resolution who contains the Global Compact on Refugees as well. And I think civil society organizations have a very, very strong role to play in the defense, in the defending the rights of migrants and of people on the move in general. So that was also very important. We will share also, if you're interested, a series of activities that we plan to undertake. The big issue happening, of course, is the Marrakesh conference on the 10th and 11th of March. Before closing, just a quick note. What did I say? Everything is in March, not true. It's 10th and 11th of December. And just, I always, because sometimes we take this for granted. Thank you for allowing my team to sit in the first row here. This is my team. And 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 members of my team and only 2 men. The rest are all women, all women. So this is, of course, not by coincidence. Our cabinet is almost like 70-30, 65% women and 35% men. I think it was about time. So just with that note, thank you. Thank you once again, Maher, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you very much for this inspiring and I think well informative, very informative briefing. I think now you know the priorities with which you can start to also align your work that you do with the President of the General Assembly and her team. And looking forward, just to expand on what you rightly said, the change of the name of the department isn't just in the name, because the way we see our role, public information can be seen as one way. Like we are producing and you are consuming. But global communication, but we want to communicate, and we also want to communicate with all of you and to bring your voice into the United Nations as well. And this is one of the examples that we do. These briefings, these opportunities to meet with the President of the General Assembly and other officials. So now the chance is yours to ask questions, and please, let's also, as we always stress, let's try to give as many of you a chance to ask the question. So make your intervention brief, introduce yourself, and those of you who are new to the microphone is just press, and then when it's red, then you can speak. So we'll start with 3, and then we'll take another round. So 1, 2, 3.
Sir, thank you. Welcome. And we wish you the most success in the future. First of all, I'd just like to say Jerry Spivak, Communication Coordination for the United Nations. The thing that I'm concerned about, I just finished a book by Isabel Allende, The House of the Spirits, and this talked about power and how power can be misused or used and so on. And the question is, how can we, in an organization that supposedly involves the United Nations, deal with members that go against all principles of the United Nations and may have inordinate power to do so? So how can we censor them? How can we stop them when, for example, they say the Paris Agreement is the wrong agreement, or that they're about to end nuclear treaties with Russia? So this is a major concern, and I'm wondering how the General Assembly can deal with that.
Please.
No se escucha. Hola, Presidenta María Fernanda. Yo soy Douglas Castro de Nicaragua, de la Alianza Cívica. Mi pregunta es que hay problemas, ¿soy yo? Sí. Hay problemas, por ejemplo, como en el caso de Nicaragua, se está hablando de los refugiados, se habla de 40.000 refugiados y hay un problema humanitario, 325 asesinados documentados por la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos. También tenemos 600 presos políticos y creo que es una emergencia latinoamericana, pero muchas veces solo se habla del problema humanitario y no se ataca el problema estructural, que es la naturaleza del régimen político de Nicaragua, que es efectivamente autoritario. ¿Cuál sería su respuesta a esos problemas? cómo atacar el problema de raíz y no solo estar atacando realmente lo superficial, pues, que son sus efectos. Muchas gracias.
Can you wait until it turns red?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for speaking of us. I really appreciated what you said about being the moral conscience of your country. I'm part of Nicaraguan civil society, and as you know, in Nicaragua, since April, the state-sponsored violence has led to 500 political prisoners, 300 extrajudicial killings. Right now, people in Nicaragua are living in fear of being unjustly imprisoned, tortured, and violated by the very authorities that are supposed to protect us. States are the guarantors of human rights, but in Nicaragua, it is the government who is violating our rights, who is terrorizing the streets, who is burning families alive, who is killing to shoot its own citizens. Right now, the 600 political prisoners are being tortured, women are being raped in prison, they're being starved, men are being sodomized by guns. It's a terrible situation, and as a political leader, as a president of the General Assembly, will you condemn these human rights violations, and will you work with the member states to secure political will to demand the immediate release of these political prisoners? Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take more questions? Yeah. Or you? A couple more. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll come to you. Yeah.
My name is Margaret O'Dwyer, Company of the Daughters of Charity. Our constituents continually ask us, what is the UN doing about Venezuela? That would be one question, and then also a separate question, how does homelessness figure into your agenda? It affects women, it affects persons with disabilities, people without meaningful work, and a comment about how can we put an end to homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, my name is Roslyn Nubiñas, and I'm with the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is United States. I'm also a member of the Youth Representative Steering Committee for DPI. So my question in regards to restructuring and to reform, what are your plans for involving the youth in a way that's natural, honest, and our comments are upheld to the same seriousness as our peers? Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you very much. My name is Jeffrey Huffines. I'm UN Representative for Civicus, World Alliance for Citizen Participation. And Madam President, I would like to thank you for focusing our attention on the critical theme of making the UN relevant to all people. We would agree that the robust participation of we the peoples through robust NGO participation at the UN is critical to make the UN indeed relevant. And there are two matters of urgent concern to civil society. First is regarding the question of civil society participation in the General Assembly high-level plenary meeting on the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders that's scheduled for the 18th of December. We would appreciate knowing if civil society will be given the opportunity to participate in this event, both from the floor as well as on the panels, as it has been invited to do so in previous events, such as last year's high-level debate marking the 10th anniversary of the International Convention on the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. Second is regarding the urgent priority of revitalizing the UN, and we thank you very much for highlighting this. UN 2020 has initiated a sign-on letter addressed to you to urge you to begin preparing now for the 75th anniversary of the UN in 2020. And all the preparations for high-level events during 2019 is most urgent. As this milestone approaches of the 75th anniversary, there's a widely shared concern that the sustainability of a rules-based international order cannot be taken for granted, that multilateralism is indeed under increasing threat. So we would therefore urge you to work with member states to initiate as soon as possible a formalized General Assembly resolution to mandate a process for a dedicated 75th anniversary summit for the UN in 2020. Thank you.
Okay, I think maybe more?
Give me a chance to respond to a little bit of that.
Let's.
Okay. The question about power. I think it's so important because we tend to think that power is monolithic power, that power is about heads of state and government deciding everything on behalf of their citizens. And of course, you know, the best system that we have, it is not a perfect system, but it's democracy. And I think, and believe me, I have been, you know, a public official in positions where I was able to take some important decisions, but at the end, you end up understanding that power is a collective, truly, is a collective making. In that, if you leave the people taking decision up there just to forget that whatever they do, they have to be accountable to the people that have voted for them or selected them. So I think that we should not take for granted, you know, people's power, the we the peoples of the Charter, as our colleague was reminding us. In this house, the United Nations is in a way the house of a house for rethinking power in a way that I don't see any other places. For example, when I sit at the General Assembly, and of course now I sit at the podium because I'm the president, but I've been sitting, you know, in the Ecuador's place for several times, being a minister or an ambassador here as well. It is the only place in planet Earth where we all sit in the same seats. You know, I haven't seen, you know, a seat of a country bigger or smaller or larger than other. We have all the same seats, the same microphone to speak, and the same button to vote. And this is extremely powerful. That's why I'm a strong believer on multilateralism. That's why I'm a strong believer on the role of the United Nations. Of course, an enhanced role, a greater presence of the United Nations, and also something very important. I think that we all need to read the Charter again, because we tend to forget why we are here. And that, of course, it's just as a very important note. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I sent a letter to all member states with a small copy of the Charter. And I invited them to reread the principles of the Charter. I think they are so powerful and they are so timely nowadays. Of course, the history has changed. Of course, after 73 years, we are not in the same situation as after the Second World War, but the principles have to remain the same. Human dignity, for example. Human dignity. It is so important, yet we see that human dignity is not respected in so many parts of the world, and we need to do more and urgently. Regarding the two colleagues that spoke about Nicaragua, but also there was a reference to Venezuela. And here again, I want to be very honest with you. I am from Latin America. I'm a president that represents the region, but I am also the president of the 193 states. I follow closely what is happening in general in Latin America. Unfortunately and painfully, issues are very difficult in several countries of the region. And the agenda of the General Assembly has to be dictated in a way by the member states. I think that if any démarche is taken, the démarche should be taken by the member states, requesting that the UN looks at these issues. What I know, because I have a very good conversation and permanent communication with the Secretary General. He's also, as I am, trying to help and trying to be, to support these countries to engage into peaceful solutions of their own conflicts. International law is very clear about principles of non-intervention, but also about principles of encourage dialogue and peaceful solutions of conflict. If we want to see what happens when there is a military intervention, what happens when the killings of innocent civilians cannot be stopped, then we have to look around and we will see more than one case. So I think that, yes, perhaps the United Nations can be useful. The only way that the United Nations can be useful is using the mechanisms that exist within the system. The Secretary General and myself are both following the situation in these two countries, and we will be, ready to listen to the request or interest from the member states. General Assembly is the parliament of humanity, and whatever is decided there has to come from the agreement of member states. And of course we are concerned, and the concern goes even beyond. The concern is making every region of the planet sustainable and peaceful. Unfortunately, we are seeing, some persistent conflicts around the world that are really, really affecting the fundamentals, starting by human dignity in so many parts of the world. Regarding the issue of homelessness that you mentioned, yes, of course, this issue has been addressed in many instruments and resolutions of the United Nations. More precisely and more importantly, the urban agenda, the UN Habitat urban agenda, that's from the multilateral perspective, but I think that homelessness is perhaps one of the most, painful and unjust symptoms that we need to fight against inequality and human rights. Unfortunately, the places where you see these inequality gaps more acute are in urban settings. And I think that we have to work towards reducing inequalities and combating poverty, which is at the center of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now about the role of youth. I think that we have a Secretary General that has taken very seriously the role of youth. I was present myself last September when we launched the Youth Strategy 2030. We have a special envoy on youth, Jahadma. She is an engine and a machine of work herself, and I think that basically from my side as President of the General Assembly, I am ensuring, and my team knows that whatever, any activity that we embark on, we need to have the voices. I don't like to speak about youth, I want to speak with youth. And so there is going to be anything that is connected to my job is going to have a seat and a voice for the young people. My first activity in Katowice, as soon as I landed in Poland, was to join the COI, the Conference of the Youth, with about 1,000 young people from around the world that are committed to the climate agenda. So you're very important actors of the multilateral system, but also very important architects for a more sustainable, peaceful, and I would say, and bright world today. I'm also not very keen about saying, no, you're the future. No, you're not the future. You're the present, and we are working with you. Nothing about you without you. And finally, on participation of NGOs on the 18th of December, on the 75th anniversary, we are working on that. I want to be very honest, this is a very difficult issue. My role is to consult with all member states to come to agreement on the means of participation of civil society. If I could, my take on this, having been a member of civil society, having been an activist myself, I know how important this is. Unfortunately, when the United Nations was created 73 years ago, or when the rules and procedures of the organization were designed, I think that we didn't have at the time a civil society that was so vibrant, so active and so important to the decision-making processes. So we are working on that. I'm saying it's not an easy task, and we will try and make our best to have the best, the best architecture, the best design for the 18th of December. We are consulting with member states. I have appointed 2 countries only to consult on creative ways to engage civil society. These are the ambassadors of Italy and Argentina. And they are helping me put together a format that would, be acceptable to all interested parties. So I think that's it.
On the UN 2020 75th anniversary?
Oh, 75th anniversary, yes, indeed. We will start the preparations this year. I have already had some conversations with member states. This afternoon, I will meet the General Committee, all the General Assembly presidents and chairs of committees, and this is one of the issues that I am going to address with them. We are going to be prepared, and I hope that for the 75th anniversary, we will have something good, strong, and big to share to the public opinion out there.
Thank you. So next round, so I know that you two raised your hands before, so 1, 2, and then we'll come to this side, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nasser, Your Excellency. My name is Monica Jahangir Chaudhry, and I represent the international movement ATD 412, ATD standing for All Together in Dignity. At the UN, our mission is to create spaces for people living in extreme poverty to come and share their life experiences and their knowledge so they can input into UN processes. So we are delighted to know about the theme on making the UN more transparent, more relevant, and willing to listen to the voices of the real people, and we hope that people living in extreme poverty are included in this process. We are currently trying to launch a process with the president of ECOSOC to see how we can strengthen the voices of people living in poverty in UN processes, and we'll be delighted to explore similar work with your office. My 2 questions for you are how can the GA encourage all member states to better integrate the voices and experiences of people living in extreme poverty in the national implementation of the 2030 agenda? And are there ways in which people living in poverty can make their voices better heard within events organized by the GA? I'm thinking of maybe the HLPF that will take place in September next year. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next, please.
No? Sorry, my first time using the microphone here. Good morning, and thank you so much for this chance to come before you and to meet you and speak with you one-on-one. It's very refreshing to have a chance to be in such close contact and to really be, as you mentioned, more relevant and close with the United Nations. So we have a chance to come and represent an international organization called the International We Love You Foundation. And our chairwoman, Zangil Jan, has been leading a global movement of promoting UN SDGs on an unprecedented scale, with around 150,000 volunteers inspiring millions. We have a theme to share a mother's love. Like, as a mother continually gives and gives, so also we want to follow that example and give selflessly in many different fields. We currently participate in a Clean World movement, worldwide blood drives, disaster relief, social welfare, international aid, including aiding refugees, especially in Jordan and Syria. So our question is, what would you suggest to be the best way of encouraging and promoting female leadership in collaborating with the UN? How can the foundation work more closely with the UN? We're currently going through the process to work with the UN DPI and also with ECOSOC to do more correctly.
Hi there, Madam President. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. My name is Jonathan Cummings, and I'm the Partnership Manager for the World Human Accountability Organization. And it's a fairly new organization that works with increasing access to global health care, climate change, and promoting education and youth development. And we also do some philanthropy work. So my question is in regards to what you stated earlier about reforming the Security Council. Could you specifically talk about what reforms you envision and how can NGOs and civil society assist with reform in the Security Council. So what do you envision NGOs doing with that? Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful, great opportunity, Her Excellency. And I really applaud your statement that GA is the parliament of the humanity. But, there is always a but, we are not there. In terms of observer, as far as I am aware, there are, I may be wrong with the number, 5,000 NGOs, a combination of DPI, ECOSOC, Academic Impact, UNESCO, UN Women, perhaps more than that. But we are not under one roof at the UN as all the member states under one roof at the GA, but we are not at the one roof under the UN as an NGOs. So my proposal is, or question is, what might be the best way to engage the NGOs, not just like with the ticket, whether we could get the ticket or we could, but in a formal mechanism that we will able, with all the logistics and protocol as an observer under one roof to be represented at the GA, and then most meetings are closed to the NGOs. So this is beyond my colleague Jeff's question or request participating to the December 18, but how can be UN relevant if we are left out all or most part of the General Assembly sessions, as I consider we are, as an all NGOs at large, public faces as an NGOs and universities, if there will be any mechanism or any work to make real relevance starting at the UN here. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Hola, mucho gusto de conocerla. Mi nombre es Jennifer Macedo de la Escuela de Notre Dame of Maryland y como joven latinoamericana quería preguntarle qué se haría en Ecuador para poder legalizar a las mujeres el derecho a voz de su propio cuerpo del aborto.
Hello, Your Excellency. Earlier you mentioned about how the UN is pushing forth more of a conversation about climate change and trying to implement it into all NGOs and to all governments. My question is, because recently more statistics have come out about how climate change is increasing and more governments are talking about how they are either backing out of Geneva or they're not just implementing basic rules about climate change. And because this is an issue that affects not just all of us in this room, but the environment and animals and just the whole reproduction of this world, how are you pushing forth the conversation in the General Assembly with the member states to truly implement climate change in their governments?
Thank you. I think I'm aware of the time, and I think maybe this is the last opportunity for you to respond to those questions, and maybe we can continue a little bit after that as long as we have the room and maybe talk about other issues if we have chance. But, Madam President.
On the question on how to engage and may participate the persons in extreme poverty and give them voice. Here I think that one of the beauties of the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030 is precisely that it's a tool that enables and allows local communities to be fully engaged and participate. Very quickly, I visited India. One of the most touching moments was when I had the opportunity to meet children from shanty towns, very poor areas, that they were really making changes, profound changes in their communities, improving their livelihoods using the SDGs. And I saw children of 10, 12 years old, working at the community level with the SDGs. I think that sometimes really transformation of daily lives and livelihoods do happen at the very local level. And of course, the United Nations should be a space to listen to them directly. But I am a full believer on the principle of subsidiarity. And I think that the SDGs allows that to happen. Regarding all of the engagement and participation of youth, the April HLPF and the Youth Forum is going to be a great opportunity. We are working together with ECOSOC to make sure that we have, a strong moment to put the youth agenda at the center. Same goes for the summit in September, HLPF General Assembly Summit. Engagement with the UN, of course, there means very clear mechanisms. Perhaps they're not good enough. They have to be improved. They have to be brought to present, because as mentioned 73 years ago, I think the composition of our societies was very, very different. How to help on Security Council reform. This is one of the most complex yet and contentious issue in the House. Very different positions, very complicated to reach agreement on how and when to reform the Security Council, but there is a mandate of member states to go ahead with the reform. Again, the question about how to formalize participation of NGOs within the General Assembly. There are several ideas, several avenues, several even options on the table. This has to go through the hands of member states themselves, but you have a very important role to play there. What we have so far is the ECOSOC accreditation process and mechanism, and the NGO committee within the UN. And we will continue to work under this framework, and of course you have an ally on me, so anything that I can do, I'll be more than happy to support. Climate change, yes, of course. We are running out of time for climate change. I sent a very bold and strong message in Katowice 2 days ago. The scientific evidence is telling us, and that if we do not act urgently, seriously, and it is true, humankind will disappear from planet Earth, and planet Earth with humankind perhaps as well. So it's not to be tragic, but evidence shows us that if we do not increase our ambition and change the way we produce and we consume, we are going to all disappear, and faster as we were expecting. So we have to act quickly and now. And this is not only governments, it's the private sector, it's organized civil society, it's the consumer side as well. And finally, in Ecuador, the right to our bodies, I think that Ecuador perhaps is one of the countries that has done the most in terms of legislation, in terms of protecting the lives of women. But there is more to do. And I know that the issue of abortion is a very complex issue. If you look at what is happening around the world, I think it's useless to give my personal opinion on this, but I think it's good that women, especially young women, get involved in this discussion, because there is still a lot to do in terms of women's rights in particular, but in terms of women's survival and women's right to their own bodies, of course. And there's a long way to go still. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I know that you all want to ask questions, but I know that also the President has a schedule that she needs to keep to. So she has been very generous with her time to be with us today. And I would like to, on behalf of all of you, on behalf of the Department of Public Information,
just one thing.
Please.
I want to be very politically incorrect and just not respect the order or anything, but I saw a young woman from my country, from Ecuador, raising her hand since the very beginning, and if you allow me to listen to her, she wanted to say something, and I'm eager to listen to her. She is so sorry about it.
Please.
much, Maria Fernanda. I feel very blessed and grateful for stay and present here. Yes, represent my wonderful country, Ecuador. So, yeah. And also, I want to say congratulations for being the first woman to represent the Latin America, and also the first woman to the General Assembly President. I want to introduce myself. My name is Nicole Insuasti. I am a member of the International Presentation Association, NGO, the IPA member of ECOSOC. My focus work was specific with indigenous people in Ecuador. I had the opportunity to have this wonderful time with the indigenous issues, especially with the young people in Ecuador. My question is so specific how we can relate and promote the SDGs and the Agenda 2030 for the countries in development, especially Latin America. Because we know that Latin America has a lot of problems as a result of the corruption. So how we can vinculate the Agenda 2030 and the multilateralism in this country that has the corruption. So how we can reduce that and improve to the inequality that is the big issues that the world has to promote the solution for a wonderful and a world better for all. Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda, for being present. Es un orgullo para mí que tú estés representando a mi país y aquí a Naciones Unidas. Gracias.
Muchas gracias también. Very, very quickly on that, I have seen extraordinary examples of how indigenous peoples they have done, and there are several cases in Ecuador, a couple of them, that they have taken the 2030 agenda and they have done a translation exercise. Translation exercise meaning culturally adaptive SDG framework, and this is extremely important. And they have come up in the case of Ecuador that I know better, and I've worked with indigenous peoples for decades now. What they do is that they come up with these proyectos de vida, life projects, as they call it. In Ecuador, we have 15 indigenous nationalities, as we call them. And several of them, they have gathered under their own government structures to translate the Agenda 2030 to transform it into a culturally sensitive 2030 agenda. So that is a great exercise. I think that's the way we should go about it. And especially using this International Year of Indigenous Languages, and especially also using the Decade of African Descent. As you know, in Latin America, in Ecuador, 7% of the Ecuadorian population is from African descent as well. So I think the translation can be done on the issue of corruption. I think we have to be very careful. Yes, zero tolerance for corruption, zero impunity for corruption, but sometimes I think that the corruption agenda takes too much of the concern and of the media. They like to make scandals of everything, and sometimes to hide things that are as important as that. I'm saying this as a citizen. Sometimes, people are dying of hunger, there are decreasing taxes for the wealthiest, and suddenly, but everybody speaks about corruption. And you say that when you have a front page on corruption issues, all the rest just disappears. And I think that we have to give space and place for every important matter. Corruption is one, but issues of poverty, of inequality, of violence against women are equally important. So thank you very much. That was great. Thank you very, very much for inviting me. I hope this is not the last time, because I would like to come as frequently as I can to have this conversation with you. It's a learning experience, and also to say the truth, I feel at home. I feel one of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I think this last statement is music to our hearts and to their hearts. We will make sure to come back to your office, definitely. And one of the things that we will also share are the details of the conference that is 26 to 28 August of 2019 in Salt Lake City. We hope to see you there.
Oh, August, that's great. It's very likely that we'll attend. Okay, thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. I feel that you're going to have your own Buffalo for Antigua. Super.
So just before you leave, a reminder of next week on the 13th of December is the meeting to come and discuss the plans and preparation for the DPI or the conference next year in Salt Lake City. I will be able to share with you some of the details and impressions I had from my visit to Salt Lake last week. And on your way out, you might want not to miss, there are new exhibits. One of them will be open tomorrow, marking the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 10th anniversary. The exhibit opening will be tomorrow, but the exhibit is already out there. There's another exhibit on people on the move, another exhibit on the question of Palestine. So please enjoy. Thank you.